I guess wir machen es genau dasselbe, nur ohne
All of
Bucket.
his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Nur ohne Bucket.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well.
Und ich gehe mal
Perhaps he
den
wanted to stop
anderen
by
Weg,
the
den längeren.
employee lounge first, just to admire it.
War's okay?
It was okay.
Es war okay. War das wirklich... Wie ist das überhaupt passiert? Alter, ich habe einfach nach oben geschaut und...
But eager to get back to business,
Oof.
Stanley took the first open door on his left. And so he detoured through the maintenance section, walked straight ahead to the opposite door, and got back on track.
Alles zu, alles zu. Okay, das war jetzt nichts Besonderes. Nearby a fireplace. Im Boss Office, schätze ich mal. A private but smelly place. Beide bei Boss Office.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet,
Nope.
but there was nothing here. So he turned. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Soll ich schon mal was erzählt ohne Bucket?
Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down?
Ja.
Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself.
Oh.
I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Oh.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Oh.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Ohne Eimer.
Mariella woke up on a day like any other.
Ohne
She
Eimer.
arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work.
Ohne
But
Eimer.
on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk.
Auch ohne
And
Eimer.
although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
GG.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply... The good old bucket. Just
Good old
Stanley and
bucket.
the bucket. Off on another thrilling adventure together. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
So, und jetzt kann man theoretisch mal die zwei letzten Stiegelchen
Coming to the
anschauen.
staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
Jetzt müsste hier
You're
sein,
getting
genau.
close now, Stanley. You've nearly gotten all of the Figler Anlarines. Very soon, you'll collect the last one, and then the first number will equal the second number, and that will be it. We'll be different people by then. Different in the sense that we used to have none of them, and now we have them all. You can't go back to when you had no Figler Anlarines. None of us can.
Yes, yes. Den Fireplace? Nee, gell? Auch kein Feuerplatze.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket.
Ja, die ist
Even
nochmal.
now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos. It would be with him always. The bucket would, and he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the pin number for the keypad was 285. 645.
Ja, schon mal fast richtig.
But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
So, und jetzt die Sache. Behind the huge fireplace. Also irgendwo hier. Theoretically, oder nicht? Was ist denn da? Da will ich hin.
And there it is.
Yay!
The last Stiggly Wiggly. Savor this moment, Stanley. This is a real accomplishment. This is doing something just for the sake of doing it. Where so many people expect to be rewarded for the most trivial achievements, you've insisted that a job well done is its own reward. I would tell you that I'm proud of you for collecting them all, but that would be like a reward, and we can't have that. So, instead I'll just say, it's done. We're all done here, and now we can go to whatever the hell you were doing before you hunted for figurines.
Yay! Yay. Warte, das kam nicht mal ein Achievement? Wieso? So ein Scheißspiel.
The elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
Ja, denke ich mir auch.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Ist das für jedes Ende mit Bucket
Although
neues
this
Ende?
passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death.
Nice.
The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Aha, aha. Dann zeig mir mal den schönen Tod. Aha.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
"Farewell, Stanley," cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end as it was crushed violently to death.
Or not.
It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
Mein Bucket ist weg. Der Eimer. Wir stehen am Abgrund des Wissens. Ähnlich wie ein Eimer ist auch der menschliche Verstand oft leer. Eine höhlenartige Leere. Aber durch die Absorption des Ausstellungsstücks vor ihnen wird der Geist voll, bereichert und fundiert. Die Kenntnisse über den Eimer und seine Geschichte sind das einzig wahre Wissen, das wir wirklich haben. Werden Sie das, was Sie hier lernen, mit in die Welt hinausnehmen? Werden Sie auch geschlossen akzeptieren, was an den Informationen in dieser Ausstellung herausfordernd sein mag? Werden sie das Leben von sich selbst und ihren Liebsten als Folge dieser Ausstellung verändern? Oder werden sie die Augen verschließen und weiterleben wie bisher in Unwissenheit und Dunkelheit? Und das alles. Alter, was war denn da los? Und das alles wegen einem Eimer, Alter.
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
Aha. Das ist nicht meine Buckets war besonders. Eine Fotografie von 25 Eimern. Die größte Anzahl an Eimern, die jemals von einer Kamera erfasst wurde. Der Fotograf erlitt mehrere Wochen lang einen katatonischen Schock aufgrund der Euphorie, die er beim Anblick von die er beim Anblick so viele Eimer auf einmal empfand. Ja? 25? Das ist mehr als 25. Mr. Bean-like. Ah ja. Ich würde mitnehmen. Inferno-Eimer, eine Nachbildung des Inferno-Eimers, der im Mittelalter eine so große Anziehungskraft ausübte, dass Dutzende von Nationen gegeneinander Krieg führten, um die Kontrolle über ihn zu erlangen. Milliarden von Menschen starben und trotz allem bleibt die einfache Tatsache bestehen. Niemand kann einen Eimer kontrollieren. Alles klar. Boring, negative forecasting, negative thinking, lack of resilience. Nein. Okay. I guess von irgendwo kommen Orks. Muss ich die jetzt mit Eimern abwerfen?
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
Oh. I guess ich flieg gleich runter. Oh. Habe ich gewonnen?
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another
Yo,
beautiful
chill.
bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place
Ach ja.
as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
Einmal ist auch gestorben. Aber der Eimer war doch so schön.